We'll get this conversation started. So, so Bobby, tell me, where are you tuning in from today, right now?
Today I am in the wonderful state of beautiful Colorado.
Awesome. And let's see. So we connected over the off-grid lifestyle and talking about off-grid living, and you've lived off-grid for, is it 15 years now?
Yes, I sure have.
Okay, so and not just in the United States, but internationally as well.
Absolutely. I traveled to South America when my son was about 7 months old, and through South America, I ended up in Ecuador for almost a year and stayed at intentional communities, and most all of them were off grid and doing all kinds of different alternative building methods and different cultures, different ways of living.
So cool. And okay, so there's so much to unpack there. But before we go too deep down the rabbit hole, I think the word off grid is almost having coming back for a second lap and being almost trendy now and almost aspirational for people who want to maybe think about living differently, escaping the rat race and unplugging and coming back to an analog world rather than a screen-oriented world. So, what exactly does it even mean to you to be off grid? I understand you can Google it, but tell me, like, what does that mean to you to be off grid?
Well, I don't pay a utility company. We're not actually tied to the systems of the on-grid things, but that doesn't mean we don't have anything. We have our own systems. A lot of the things are more upfront of a cost, where purchasing a solar system, you're putting all your money up front, but then you don't have that monthly recurring bill. Um, Off-grid to me also means remoteness, and that's probably one of the biggest things in my life that I value, I look for. I have always chosen over the past 15 years areas that give me the vast views, areas that I do not see other people's lights or hear other people's barking dogs. Um, Basically, honestly, probably the one thing that I can't get away from is airplane traffic, no matter where you're at. But the silence, the peace, um, and just being able to rely on myself, not just flipping a switch and going to the same job so that I can flip that switch and have a convenience. You have to work for anything that you have out here, and that's what builds muscle, strength, resilience, grit. So that's my off-grid journey. Also raising my child up in an area to where he has more connection and contact with the land, with the trees, with the ground, than being kind of following the herd, I guess.
Wow. I love it. So thinking independently and taking accountability and agency for your own life. What would you say the exact moment when, if it was a moment that it was that you realized that the sort of more traditional, is traditional even the right word? It depends on your background, I guess, but the more conventional or commonplace way of living, what do you remember a moment when you realized that that just wasn't for you?
I bought a house, foreclosure, and I put a ton of money into it to make it, which at that point in my life was a big stepping stone. I had become a massage therapist, a yoga teacher, and a Reiki instructor, and I bought this place so that I could have our kids, at that time, my husband's kids, come home from school, and I was there, and my business was from home. But when I realized what I had purchased and the interest I was going to be paying back and how hard I had to work just for that box, I wanted something different because I knew that money that I had or I was going to create to pay off all of that could go to something larger, something that meant more. I kind of felt trapped financially and physically, even. And that's when I started researching alternative ways of living.
So you didn't like the mortgage handcuffs or whatever you want to call that, where you just felt like you could see the next 30 years of your life.
I said to my partner at the time, I said, we're going to have to work this hard and maybe even harder just for this. And at the time when we had bought that, I thought that that was the right thing to do. I was following what everybody else was doing. And I did start a tiny little organic garden in the back. So I started to dip my feet in, but I understood that living just outside city limits with on a quarter of an acre with everybody else around me still having a quarter of an acre, it was still very restricting and very confining for me, let alone all of the bills that went on top of that. And to me, that was throwing a lot of money away. And I wanted the hard earned money that we were making to go towards something that would build something more than just that. And so I
So,
could feel it at that point and spread my wings out, started searching.
and so how did you find an alternative? Talk about all the different things you considered and how you kind of, what you found next.
Well, I basically started typing in, and this was 15 years ago. Well, yeah, 15 years ago. So a little bit less internet structured to where you really have to put certain words in to find things. But I started typing in alternative ways of living. I came across sites like the Woofing site, working on organic farms. I wanted to feed myself and my family better. I had also one of my husband's children was dealing with school and the ADHD stigmatism that goes on with kids who just don't want to be in school because it's not personally how I feel that our bodies are supposed to sit for 8 hours a day and just not do anything. So I looked at different ways to feed ourselves. So I finally just worked on multiple websites that said, come stay with us and we will teach you how to grow a better garden. We will teach you how we're living. And I had a 10-year plan, which in reality, I said, that's not going to work for me. So I shortened it into 2 years. I started paying things like my truck. I started paying double on my truck if I could so that I could get rid of that bill. Eventually, that 2-year plan, I shortened it to an 8-month plan. I wasn't going to wait any longer. I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think my children at the point that point should do it. So what I ended up doing instead of jumping right away, because that can be really scary, I rented my house out. I took a pop-up camper. Bought a horse trailer and we put tools in it. And we took my husband's two kids and our cat and we were accepted into another family who was doing organic farming. And this was just still in the States, it was in Arkansas. So from there, I found intentional communities, I found eco villages. I stepped away from just the organic farming because that's wonderful to learn, but I wanted more. I've realized we moved to places that were building with cob, building with timber frame, building root cellars, building composting toilets. And uh, then I moved to intentional communities where people were sharing resources and all working towards a common good to where the intentional communities would provide your food, your health care, the vehicles you use, and so forth. From there, I still felt like I was searching for more. So I went to South America. I wanted to see a lot of different ways that older cultures were doing things. The American culture is very new. We've only been over here for a short amount of time. But if you look at the rest of the world, they've been doing this for so long. So I went down to South America. I traveled from one side to the other side and then went up to Ecuador and I found a community where I felt I wanted to spread my wings in a way to learn the ways that they are living with the indigenous communities, also the way that they're growing food, the way that the markets are down there are just phenomenal. The food that just grows right outside your door, mainly because of the climate. So from that, I spent a good amount of time down there. But in all honesty, there were some limitations. I was having a hard time learning the language. It's possibility. I was, in my late 30s. I had a younger kid. So as I was trying to integrate myself into those places, There was one thing that I missed, even though South America is wonderful. I missed the Pacific Northwest. I missed the wildness of the bears, the vastness of the views. It's all anywhere you look, but there was something in my heart that was telling me to come back. So at that point, I came back and I traveled around the Pacific Northwest again and found another intentional community that really opened my eyes to what I felt like was home. And in doing that, um, I found a ranch that was not too far from that community, just over the hill, and they needed a caretaker. And when I explained who I was with my partner and my year and a half year old boy, the ranch owners said, "Hey, set up your tent." And at that time, I lived in a wall tent. It was a nice green military wall tent, so it actually had some windows that you could pull up that you could see out. And we set up our wall tent in November in the Northern California mountains and sat through a couple feet of snow through the winter in an off-grid place. I had a backpacking solar charger, and that was all that I had for power. And as time went on, I moved up into the larger caretaking house that became available, and I've been there for 10 years now.
Wonderful. And so much of what you're saying is speaking directly to my soul. You know, how much we can learn from civilizations who have lived off of the land. And for some reason, we seem to over-engineer our homes these days. I think it was that Taos architect, Michael Reynolds, who was telling me about Earthships, and he was describing, people are so worried about, water and power, and they both literally fall from the sky. You have sun coming down, providing solar energy, and you have rain coming down, which you can use catchment. And people almost forget that you can actually rely on what nature provides to support your lifestyle, and you might actually be missing out on more than you think by experiencing some of those cold days, those hot days, the hard labor that makes food taste better. Um,
Absolutely.
so I want to kind of come back to a place I bookmarked when you were talking, and I want to ask you, so when you were choosing this alternative lifestyle, what did your friends and family say when you told them you were going to do something differently, or did you not tell them?
Oh, I definitely told everybody. I had a thriving business for massage therapy and yoga, and my most of my clientele there, some of them were saying, "Oh, you'll be back. This is just a phase, you know." But I most of them were envious. Some of them said that this was kind of risky. But a lot of them thought that it was brave. My father definitely thought I was brave, and he was very envious of what I was doing. My mother thought I was a little off my rocker. But as they have seen, and I have proven to just about everybody, I've stayed, so they saw that I was serious. But what I did say to somebody who was telling me that this is risky, are you sure you want to do that? I said, what is the worst that can happen? I come back to this life? I thought, let's just jump and let's see what's going to happen. Because if you don't have the guts to change it, then you're just going to stay the same. So accept the responsibility one way or the other.
I love that. How hard would it be to get back to where you were? Well, not that hard. I've always loved to quote that, you know, it's not really a quote, but rock bottom. What is rock bottom? Rock bottom is actually a sleeping bag and a wall tent and a mountain view and some oatmeal, and that's not so bad.
You got it.
Um, Okay, so I'd love to kind of dive into the off-grid lifestyle a little bit. A lot of people might see somebody like yourself who might be maybe on social media or reading a blog, or like the off-grid mountain life, website you're getting going. Um, what do most people not think about before going off-grid?
I would have to think a couple of things. Number one, your water source. Water is huge. Yes, it does fall from the sky and we can catch it, but you have to have the systems in order to do that. I did that in order to have my son on a remote mountain property. I put billboard tarps on the side of a hill that funneled the water that fell into rain barrels so that I could feed my bathtub. And that's where I had my child in the bathtub. Now, drinking water, I had to walk downhill, put it in glass jars, baby on the front of me, glass jars in the back, and walk my water back uphill. So water is huge. But I also see that it seems like maybe it looks like an easier lifestyle. It looks simple. Simple can mean many different things to people. I can't say that it's any easier in ways of it's hard because you're with the seasons, you're with the land, you're with the wildlife. It's a shift. It's not just easy. It's just a whole different mind shift of what you want. And you have to be realization of your own expectations. I think some people may think that you go out there and it's just, let's get this, this, and this. And if you have a lot of money to throw at all those things, you could do it and somebody else could build it all for you and you could move on. But the majority of us, I don't think, are in that boat. We want to step outside the constraints of what we are feeling and be able to be more aware. You're more aware of your own body, you're more aware of the seasons, and you're more aware of how everything in a system works together because you have to be responsible for it. There's no utility company. When something breaks, I'm the one that fixes it. I got to know my chainsaws, my weed eaters, my my kid. That's one of the huge things is checking out the availability if you're going to have children of are there other children around or is there a community around that can also help support that? Because I think that might be one thing I have found that has been the most challenging for me is I have one child now and is finding that companionship for my child.
Mm. And that's a whole big conversation of raising a kid off grid. Wow. So I really liked what you said about, when something breaks, you're the one who has to fix it. But look at how much agency that provides you. You don't also the best thing is when something breaks, you don't need to hire somebody else to come and fix it necessarily.
Right.
Um,
You learn, and if you can't learn or you can't adapt, then go flip the switch on and go to the regular jobs where you can call somebody to take care of everything. Now, some people like that, and that's their story, but this is a life to where you will learn everything that you need to take care of yourself for.
And it seems like you were saying a lot of the costs of living off grid, there's the upfront development, there's, installing the well or installing and purchasing the solar system, or some sort of energy source or building your living accommodations. But then you're free from these ongoing, you're not paying a mortgage, you're not paying rent to somebody, you're not paying the energy companies, maybe a phone bill if that's feasible in your area, or maybe if you got Starlink internet. By the way, I'm completely off grid right now with a solar energy is powering a battery, which is powering my Starlink, which is allowing us to have internet right now. So you can do that. It's amazing what's happened with internet as far as the off-grid lifestyle goes.
Oh, absolutely. I went from walking to let's see, I think a year and a half ago, I stopped walking to the main ranch house to use internet, and it's been maybe I spent 13 or so years without internet at my fingertips. I had to go somewhere to get it. And just a few years ago, we were able to invest into the solar power, just like you said, that goes to now my Starlink, in order to be more connected with the things that are going on with family or whatever it is you want to connect with the internet. But you don't have to have it all at once and all at the very beginning. Like I said, I've been off grid for 15 years. The last 2 years, I have had internet at my fingertips, and that is, it's kind of huge in saying what you actually need as opposed to what you can deal with or what you want to work towards.
Totally. Totally. So to the extent that you can talk about the money piece, what are some unexpected costs of the off-grid lifestyle? Whether that was an upfront thing that you didn't expect or just ongoing things. Of course, presumably you're not foraging and hunting all of your food, maybe some of it, but what are some of these unexpected costs, ongoing or upfront, that you think are important to think about?
I would say fuel, like gasoline and propane, because when you live off grid, if you need to go somewhere, it costs a lot of money. If I want to go to a box store and I want to, let's say, fill up my 55-gallon drum full of fuel, I take a 3 hour one-way trip. And it's, you got to make sure that you budget all at one time for once a month or once every other month going to town. But when you go to town, you're spending a good amount of money because you need those supplies to bring them back. Um, Other things, the hmm, I would really say the fuel has been a large consumption of that because we do use fuel in our vehicles to drive, and I'm not near a gas station. A gas station is an hour and a half away from me if I need fuel. So we have extra fuel during the winter time when I'm driving around gathering firewood. I need to fill up my truck a few times at my house. So I've got to have those storage capacities of propane and fuel. But you understand that also, uh, let's say that I'm here at my parents' house, and they go out to town every other day. And so you have a difference of seeing where the money and how the money is spent from a 1 month or every other month large chunk of change as to in town, you're spending that money every single day and you might not even feel it or see it because it's just such a commonality that you do all the time.
It seems like you really have to have a grasp on the financial, especially with potentially less inflows of money. When you're off grid, you have to really be careful of those outflows. How about the opposite of that question? Has anything been surprisingly cheap or easy about living off grid?
um, well, to me, easier in a way that I walk out with my cup of tea in the morning and I see the sunrise. Easier that I can take a breath and get in my hot tub if I want to. I'm not constrained by the normal everyday busyness of living in a city. Um, Cheaper, I think it all really depends on what you want. For 13 years, it was pretty cheap because I didn't want for almost anything. I lived very, very simply. Like I said, I didn't pay an internet bill. I didn't have solar. So those things were the money was allocated towards other things, but that also meant I didn't have to work for that many things. The past several years, we have restructured some things to know that we do want a little bit more. And so setting that money aside or working more towards gathering the funds for the larger things we want, like the solar system. So it's all in your expectations of how you want to live and what type of time you want to put towards making money for the things that you want.
And I like your reframe, on sort of, I always like to ask people, like, what does it even mean to be rich to you? If being rich is to be able to wake up and on your own schedule, have a tea and take it into the hot tub while you look at the mountain sunrise, then you're the richest. There's people all over the world who could not even trade their money for that because they are still beholden to their jobs or these companies they've created or these people they manage or the lifestyle they're trying to sustain. And yet you have all of that. And that's a special thing.
Absolutely. I definitely instill in my son, he does see that we talk about finances and needing certain things allocated towards things, but he also knows and sees the lifestyle we have. And I do let him know we are very, very rich in so many ways that does not have to include money because money does not define us. It's only a bartering tool for the things that we want. I kind of feel like back in the native ways, they would trade salt for deer skins, and now we're trading these little our time for green, and then the green we trade for the solar panel.
It's just short-term tool to get what the things you like that you need in life are. Um, so tell me, how about food? How do you manage food?
Well, we do have a garden, but I do live somewhere that we have pretty heavy, heavy winters, and I have a hoop house as a greenhouse, so it's not through the winter. I would love to also allocate some time, effort, and energy towards making a more year-round greenhouse. Those are in the plans and works. I do go to the grocery store. I do hunt. We do can and process and preserve anything that we can. We have an orchard. So definitely still dependent on the system for those type of things. And foraging is few and far between in the areas that we are in, but there are, some mushrooms, a few greens once in a while. But it all depends on what location you're in the world as to what is available. If I was back in Ecuador, it's a food forest when you walk around everywhere there. Unbelievable. Not quite as much in the Pacific Northwest. There are a lot of mushrooms. We had a great big chicken of the woods this year that I did multiple things with it. I put it in some vinegar in the refrigerator, or I cut it up and I put it in the freezer, and or I dried a lot of them. So I'm trying to figure out how to use what is given to us in the best that we can. We do hunt. I do like to smoke my meat, which is one of the best that I love. It doesn't when you can something, it is wonderful, but you cook it at such high temperatures that it gets rid of a lot of the nutrients in it. So trying to understand that when we are using the things that we don't buy, how is it best to preserve them for the nutrients to go in our bodies?
Hmm. Wow, that is amazing. So what are some of the types of foods that you're growing, and what are some of the different types of animals that you're hunting?
For hunting, definitely deer and rabbit. Once in a while, you'll come across grouse or quail, but quail are pretty little. So for growing, I grow tomatoes, potatoes, onions, garlic, all kinds of winter squashes, all kinds of summer squashes. I've grown melons, cucumbers, strawberries, lots of berries. They do wonderful. So, just filling up with what we like and basically walking out into the garden. Sometimes I don't even, at home, I'm not always making a salad. I'm just going out in the garden, picking produce and eating my salad when it's there. So, yeah.
Wow. And be between what's in the off-grid lifestyle, obviously the goal would be to be able to have everything and never need to go to the grocery store. But what would you say, what percentage of your diet is at the grocery store versus what is let's put it in one bucket of foraged, hunted, or grown in your farm in your garden?
Right. I would estimate I'm probably still buying more than 50% of mine from groceries. And a lot of that is just sometimes because of preference. I do like avocados, the things that we can now get globally that we do enjoy. Goal is for the greenhouse to be able to have year-round things that help with supporting more fresh nutrients throughout the year.
Wow, that's wonderful. What other inconveniences can you speak about that you think people should know about off-grid living?
Well, I will say one thing is during firewood season, my chainsaw broke. So spending an entire day off the land to go to get a tiny little part in town is quite inconvenient. So while I was in town, I bought a second chainsaw. The things that you might need on a backup instead of, that money that went towards that second chainsaw was just about as much money as it took me to go to town to get a tiny little part. So that's definitely something that I like to have is a lot of backup parts and supplies for the water system, for any solar things that I might need, for the vehicles if something is a commonality of braking. It's can be inconvenient, but you also learned to either have spares or you learn to live without it until your next town trip.
Yeah, that's really interesting, building in some redundancy. I like looking to nature and learning from it, like how we have two lungs and two kidneys because if one were to go get into some trouble, we have the other one to keep us going. Or
Yeah.
animals have four legs, they can survive with three, and having some of that redundancy seems like a really good tip. Um, let's see. How would you, let's just talk about, you've done this for 15 years. I mean, how would you say living off grid has changed you as a person?
I'm way more resilient. I'm stronger in my heart, in my emotions, in my physique. Never, I'm in my middle 40s, and I've never, and I used to be a yoga teacher, and I've honestly never been this physically strong, but also the capabilities to know that I can learn what it is to fix. I just ordered a whole front axle for my pickup truck because my CV boot is torn. So you don't just I could take it to someone, but the cost money, it costs time. And if I can't fix things myself, then I don't think I need to be out there. It has allowed me to um, see the skills that's needed to develop them and also the decision making. For the most part, a lot of this I've done on my own as a single mother, and the decision making that I have to figure out what to do on a daily basis, what is priority, what do we really need, and can I put this off later, or not? Yeah,
Sounds like your problem-solving skills must be
yeah,
spectacular as well.
working on it. Every day is a challenge sometimes.
Would you say that this lifestyle has made you more peaceful or at peace or more stressed?
I could definitely say I'm way more at peace because I'm more aligned with who I really am, with myself as a human being. I can't say that it is stress free because when you wake up and your water line is completely frozen and you know that you've only got 2,500 gallons and it's only the beginning of winter time, well, we're going to have to ration the water. We're going to have to melt the snow. There's definitely things that can cause stress, but you have to figure out how to work with them. And through living with it for 15 years, you see how the seasons dictate what's going on with you, and you get used to it, or how to how to change it next year so it's not so stressful. Back to raising kids, I think that that is probably one of the biggest things and challenges that creates a little bit of stress is how do I make sure that I'm taking care and getting my son what he needs, along with all of our daily chores that we need to take care of, and giving him this life skills so that he can go out and do whatever it is he wants to do, but he's got a really good foundation.
Wow. So if there's somebody who watches this and they're thinking about, the off-grid life, and but maybe they're scared, but this is sort of a dream of theirs, what would you tell them?
Oh, fear is natural. Um, and I had that in myself as things were going along. But oh, that's a good one. I want to say that we have these dreams for a reason. And I think that it's a great thing for someone to be able to start taking the steps in order to see if it aligns with them. I wouldn't romanticize this at all, and I wouldn't say just leap blindly. In my case, what I did, I I rented out my house so that if it didn't work for me, I still had something to come back to. I would tell them to gather information as much as they can, and I would tell them to visit off-grid properties in the winter. It's a whole different thing in the winter. Talk to people who have lived this type of life, and that you don't have to do it all at one time. And the more prepared you are for it, the less scared you really will be. You will gain that confidence in knowing that is this right step for myself and my family. But I would say to anybody that for the most part that they are probably capable and that they are not trapped and that they can pivot if needed.
I love it. I love it. It's such an inspiring story that you have, Bobby, and I would argue that it's probably easier than it's ever been in some ways to start and jump in or dip your toes into an off-grid lifestyle with some of the tools that are available today, these plug and play energy systems, these plug and play internet systems.
Yeah.
Maybe the food forests are a little bit more scarce, than they used to be. But your message is so inspiring, and I think the world needs to hear some of your advice and your stories, especially around raising kids when you're off grid, and hopefully. Maybe we're gonna have to have you back on and maybe need you to write a few books for everybody out here. Uh,
I would
no
love to.
pressure.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm in the middle of writing an off-grid guide as we speak. I hope to have that done sometime next month, and it would be available on my website. And I also have a little Etsy store too. So myself trying to reach out to be able to support ourselves from our land because it's very, very important that I would like my partner to be home a little more to help raise my son, to help with the infrastructure and the systems. So I would love to also connect with people who are interested in that because it will only help me help other people.
Awesome. And is there any way that to help share some of the work you're doing? What would be the best way to help you?
Anybody can get a hold of me on my website by joining the newsletter. It's offgridmountainlife.com. And right now, I'm just working on trying to get out on all of the platforms. This is all very, very new for me, living 15 years off grid. I really have been so remote that I haven't dove into the internet a whole lot, except for the last 2 years. I've been trying to open myself up more because I see that it is something that more and more people are wanting to do, but it is challenging or they're afraid to take that step. And if they could connect with someone who has lived it, then the inspiration might be there. The next steps might be there. And I'm willing to open my heart up to those people who really want to know about these things so that we